Welcome, everybody, to the Evil Safety Dudes podcast. This is about all things occupational health and safety, where we cover everything from not getting sucked into a machine to not getting shot by an active killer. I am your host, Mr. Aaron Iacino, the Director of Risk Management for IBC, and I got a very special treat for y'all today. I got a guest host, Mr. Tracy Matheny. Now, this guy has been in the safety profession for over 30 years. So, Mr. Tracy, are you there? Can you hear me?
How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing good, man. We got all kinds of sirens going on outside our training center, so I don't know what's going on out there, but I'm doing good.
Good. I am too.
Yeah. Hopefully those sirens don't lead me to getting a call, else we'll have to cut this short. I have to run and help pull somebody out from under a tractor or something.
The studio might be on fire.
Well, it's going to be on fire after this podcast because I'm excited to have someone of your caliber of safety professional, just from the projects you've been on and the time you've been in the field and the things that you've seen. But, you know, something that I like to do is I like to ask safety people if they know why I called the show Evil Safety Dudes. Do you got any idea why I would name a show about occupational safety the Evil Safety Dudes? What's your best guess?
Well, I bet I'd guess that you have to be evil to be in this line of work, especially over 30 years that I've been in it.
Yeah. Why do you think you got to be evil?
Well, for the people you got to deal with. Sometimes the nicer you are, the meaner you got to get.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, there's especially in your line of work, because you know, you've been in all these huge billion-dollar, million-dollar construction projects, and some of those folks on the site, they won't even listen to you unless you're yelling. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, I've dealt with a lot of different level of companies in my careers, from the mom and pop shops to the Fortune 500 companies. And sometimes, you know, hollering and screaming at people really don't get you the end result that you really need.
For sure.
But sometimes you got to stand your ground and have a backbone and, you know, try to talk to people with the same respect they give you. But a lot of times they don't do that. So, and that's when you got to step it up a notch to at least get them to understand that you're not going to, you know, get backed up over and run back over 2 or 3 times. You got to stand your ground sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I like that. That's the first explanation we've heard from that end. But definitely, you know, the Evil Safety Dudes was born out of the idea that people label us evil, you know, because we're correcting them and you know, and all we're doing is trying to keep them from dying, but we're the bad guys all the time. That's where that name came from. Does that sound like something you experienced? People label you the bad guy when you're just trying to save lives?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times try to educate people, and they've been doing it for so long, Aaron, that they think in their own mind that they can just keep doing what they're doing. And of course, in our line of work, you know, we're always the attorney before the lawyers.
Right.
You know what I mean? And sometimes they just don't seem like that's the position that we hold. But in all honesty, you know, we're there to help try to save lives and try to correct it. You know, some of the smaller issues will get you more than sometimes the bigger issues, you know?
Yeah. You know, the small animals, the foxes destroy the vines. So another thing I like to ask safety people, because I always get some pretty wild stories, it seems like, is how did you get into safety?
Well, I'm from a little town called Paducah, Kentucky, and I went to a little school called Reland High School. And when I got out of school, I didn't really know what I was going to get into. And I went down and joined up with, I guess what they call the labor union here in Paducah. And I seen a lot of people going in and out of the back door, and I was sitting inside the front door, not getting any work. And I said to myself, you know what, I just think someday I'd like to be able to make a difference in this type of work and probably get into something better than just labor work, you know. So anyway, had a friend of mine. He opened up a company in Paducah called Analytical Industries, and I just gotten hired from a guy with a company called OHM Corporation. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're out of Findlay, Ohio. And so they're a huge environmental company, Aaron. And I just happened to be up in that part of the neck of the woods, and I had located a building that was really a unique architect configuration. And I wanted to go in and just check it out, and it was about lunchtime, so I just happened to stop and just go in, and the lady at the desk wasn't there. She was at lunch, and I just was looking at some of the architect and just walking around the building, and a man named Chris Witter came out. Excuse me. Chris was operation manager, but he came out and he asked me, he said, could he help me? And I said, well, I was just looking at the architect. And he kind of said, man, where are you from? And I said, well, he said, your accent's kind of strong. And I told him, and told him Paducah, Kentucky. And he said, no kidding. He says, man, we started this business about 10 years ago. And there's a lady that we hired from Paducah, Kentucky. And she's our payroll manager now. And she's been with us ever since that we've opened up. She's been the best help they could ever find. And I told him I was looking for a job. And so Chris took me straight back to his office. And with a little training, I become what they call, in their line of work, was an environmental survey tech. And we would go in and pretty much in level B suits and take samples of everything, of a building or a house or property. We did a lot of super fun projects, but anyway.
Would you say, is it safe to say then that you got into this line of work by accident?
It was kind of by accident, being at the right place at the right time.
And that seems like such a common theme through all safety people. They never set out to be a safety person, but they ended up being a safety person some kind of way.
Right. So I worked with him for a while, and then this guy went to school with, his name was Steve Stamper, and he opened up Analytical Industries, and I wanted to get back closer to Paducah. And so he needed an industrial hygienist, and so he hired me. And started out as, you know, when the asbestos boom came about, and abatement moved with asbestos and lead. Became an industrial hygienist, did a lot of air sampling.
Wow, I didn't know that about you.
Yep, did a lot of air sampling. I'm a certified industrial hygienist also as well.
Wow.
And did a lot of asbestos work, and then we had a project come up that was long overdue, actually, at Balfour Beatty over at the Olmsted Lock and Dam project, which was in the making for about 20 years. And we had gotten a contract to set up about 20 sound monitors at the Ballard County Refuge to help monitor the sound from the cofferdam location that will be placed with vibratory hammers.
I gotcha.
And going to be a lot of noise from the cofferdam, and so they wanted to protect the eagles at the Ballard County Refuge. So
they wanted to protect the eagles' hearing?
No, they usually if an environment's too loud, a lot of the eagles will pull up nests and move somewhere else.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So they didn't want to disturb their natural habitat, is what I'm saying.
What year you think this is?
This was back in the 90s, early 90s.
So let me throw one at you from someone
Sure.
who's been doing safety for that long.
Sure.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen, you know, in safety on, you know, project management side of things from like the 90s to like, you know, 2021, 2022, where we're at now?
Well, I struggled, you know, the first 20 years working with some of the smaller contractors, just getting them to understand that we're also there to help them not spend money, but save money. And sometimes you got to spend money to save money, but just getting them on board in being a support system for the safety department versus the Fortune 500 and above companies that actually walk the talk and do what they say they're going to do in their health and safety plan. No, there's a difference in having a health and safety plan in place, but not working it. And most of your bigger companies that I worked for, they walk the talk.
Yeah, it's always a challenge to get them to go from that dead policy to that live policy. All right, I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to pick your brain on just horror stories, man, just crazy things. Obviously, I don't want you to relive anything that's too traumatic or anything, but people need to hear the reality side of safety too. What's some of the incidents that you could recall in 30 years that still get to you?
Yeah, I had a guy. I was on a project in Wheatfield, Indiana, with NIPSCO and Fleur. Fleur Constructors is the union side of Fleur Daniel, and I had a guy that was working in the mezzanines, and we had multiple contractors, and we had a guy drop a tool from up above down below into another work area that was not barricaded off, and they had left an open hole, which was about 42 inches in diameter. So this man goes downstairs to retrieve a tool, and I don't know how he did it, Aaron, but he would have had to held his hand straight up over his head, fit through the hole.
Oh, I got you.
But he fell completely through the hole, broke his hip, both legs, and it was pretty nasty.
Man, survived?
A man did survive.
Well, and I imagine that rescue operation would have been tough.
It was tough. We had to get the stoke baskets in place and lower him down, and we're in a remote area. We had to fly him. The life flight helicopter had to come and fly him out, which is never a good idea.
Yeah.
When you helicopters involved, and had the same scenario in Eagle Grove, Iowa. We had a gentleman that was actually a spotter for one of the track holes, digging some small trenches inside a barricaded plastic heated area. And they had flaps for the equipment to come in and out, and there was a track hole. Excuse me, hang on.
I remember that project. Being in Iowa, I remember when I always remember when you're in Iowa, because usually we get together.
Right.
And I remember you were there for a minute.
Yeah, and the track hole operator was just like a half second, had turned his head, but engaged the tracks on his track hole and crushed both his legs. And of course, we had to life flight him, of course, to Des Moines for his leg repairs. But he did survive out of it. I've had, on several occasions where pipe fitters on several projects that have lost fingers and half a hands by,
wow.
Having their chain falls in different locations to where the material can shift. And the golden rule is never put your hand on the end of a piece of pipe, for safety reasons. Because if it does shift, some of those 10, 20-foot sticks weighs quite a bit, And it don't take much to cut off a finger or half a hand or even a hand.
Man. Well, let's dig back into our meeting. I remember, I think it was about 2009, maybe. I was a brand new safety man for a construction contractor, and they sent me up to this ethanol plant in Superior, Iowa. You remember that?
Yeah, it was actually Esterville.
Yeah, Esterville. There you go.
I remember it quite well. It was a big job for me. I was with Agro-Industrial, and huge job. And I remember you coming in with an insulation contractor.
That's right.
and you come into my office, man, and we just kind of clicked right off the bat, Aaron.
Yeah, you helped me get a place. You had a lead on a little apartment up there. That was like a 2-year project, and
Yep.
yeah, and then that was like my, baptism by fire right there. I'd only been a safety guy for a little while, and mainly it was training people in the classroom. And so I knew
Right.
OSHA regs because I had to train people on them. But now I'm out there living them, and that was a big eye opener for me. I remember we were building scaffold, one of my first safety, interactions with, because you were the general contractor safety guy. And
Yep.
so I was under you as just the contractor safety guy. And I remember my guys were building scaffold, and you come around, you say, "Hey, man, where's your tag at?" and I go, "What's that?" And you explain, "Oh, red means this, and that's what you need on there now while it's building, and yellow means this, and green means that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And you're like, "Yeah, man, you need some tags on this. It's our site rules." And so we had to quick, find a Fastenal, find a Granger, get us some tags, but you helped us get into compliance, and you taught me a lot, and that was a good time. I don't remember too many bad injuries on that site. I remember, I think it was at night, some kids went joyriding through the site and went into a trench. I think I remember that.
That is true. Yep, they got stuck. Of course, didn't nobody get hurt, but technically, you should always try to keep people off your job site at nighttime. Especially if you don't have good lighting. You've got a lot of open holes and trenches. Could result in a bad deal for sightseers and just joyriders, of course.
Yeah, I remember we had, I think a security guard died on that job, heart attack, sitting in that booth overnight. Just
Yep.
older gentleman just passed away. It was kind of a wild sight, though, for my first one, though. Stories are coming back. One of the, I won't say the company's name, but they had a safety guy. He got walked off site because they caught him with a gun on site. You remember that?
Yeah, he was a big hunter, and
Well, this was a handgun, if I remember the story.
it was he was a hunter, and I don't know. The owners made a big deal out of it. There's probably a lot of job sites I've been on that people that hunt after work, and never really made a big deal out of it because I didn't do a lot of car patrols in my line of work unless it was drug related.
You remember Jeff, I think was his name, with Agra, safety guy?
Yes, Jeff Crone.
Yeah.
I remember Jeff quite well.
There was a crazy story. There was a safety man up there, and he was saying all kinds of crazy stuff. Like he was telling people how to transfer from a scissor lift to the pipe rack. He was saying, tie off to the lift, go up all the way in your scissor lift, get to the level of the pipe rack, and then climb into the pipe rack while you're still tied off to the scissor lift, and then hold on tight, and then lean out of the pipe rack way down into the scissor lift and untie. And he's like, that if I catch you transferring any other way, you're out of here. We were all going, whoa, this ain't right, this ain't safe. And there was a lot of issues with this guy, and he was supposed to have a master's in safety. And I remember Jeff launched an investigation on him and found out he forged his documents, and he wasn't really had any credentials.
That was another gentleman.
Yeah. It wasn't the same guy who got escorted off for the gun, but being a new safety guy and seeing all this, it was like, wow, this is kind of like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, Steve was he was a corporate safety guy. He was an old electrician by trade, and you should never climb out of a man basket unless you already have an independent tie-off point before you ever think about getting out of a basket. If you get outside of a basket and you're tied off to it, chances are you're going to pull that basket down on top of it.
Yeah, I don't think, a lot of them little scissor lifts being so narrow were designed for that type of force and that angle. But yeah, it was a good eye opener. I learned a lot from that site. I learned a lot about safety in the real world versus safety in the OSHA book.
Yeah, those man lifts, a lot of the scissor lifts are rated for 550, and then some of your bigger mouth with the slide outs, usually rated for about 750, 800 pounds, and it don't take much gravity pull for a man's 250 pounds to pull one over on you, you know.
Another crazy story I remember about that site is the mechanical contractor on the second floor. Before there was any skin on the building, any stairs, there was just some grading down on the second floor. They cut a big hole in it. No, the steel erectors did that for the mechanical contractors, because the mechanical contractor is going to run a large bore pipe up through vertically through the floor.
Right.
So the steel erectors come, cut that huge hole out of there, and there's about 5 different contractors up there, about 20 guys on this floor, and now there's this huge hole, probably 4 or 5 foot in diameter. And one of the welders forgot it was there, and he was walking backwards. And, they just torched it out. You know how when you torch that metal grating, it makes a real jagged ends. And he didn't fall through. He caught just the edge, but that jagged cut slit him all the way down. He ended up breaking his leg, but he stayed up. He didn't fall through. But he had a broken leg, and he was bleeding, and there was no way to get him down. And that was like one of my first injuries and rescues that I was involved in. And that was just a terrible train wreck.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the golden rule. You create a hole, you cover it. Automatic.
Right.
And sometimes contractors get ahead of themselves and they create a hole, especially for pipe penetrations, and they forget, and then you got other contractors that are just doing their thing and not paying attention to what's around them, and then they end up either, one foot goes in, they catch themselves and break an arm or cut themselves really bad, or they fall through it, fall to their death,
Right. I remember the scaffold contractors on site. They were professional scaffold builders, building them 80-foot tall scaffolds around the beer columns and evaporators. Talking to that foreman, he had a lot of stories of deaths being a scaffold builder for as long as he was. And that really woke me up, some of those stories he was telling.
Yeah, he told me a lot of stories. Scaffold building is a niche market in our business. And there's a lot of small scaffold building contractors out there that they want to hurry up and get the job done, and then there's some that take a lot of pride into their structure that they build, and they don't leave anything unturned, any rocks unturned. They make sure that you got access. They make sure all your ladders are all tied and fixed, whether it's a stairwell or just a fixed ladder. Or temporary fixed ladder, or making sure all the boards are secured and proper, over lengths of at least a foot. Some of those guys put a lot of pride into their scaffold work, and that's why I like, most of the time if I need scaffolding, I always hire a third party, man. That's what they do for a living.
Yeah, for sure. You want those, genuine professionals. Hey, yeah. But you know what? We shouldn't have a podcast with Tracy Matheny on it without talking about Antarctica. Let's go to Antarctica because what you did there is rare, and not a lot of safety people. There's not a lot of safety people to begin with, but out of all the safety people, not a lot can say they've done stuff like this. So, if I remember right, you got hired by a company that got hired to take down the old Edmondson Scott Research Center. Is that right?
That is correct. It took me 10 years to get in the United States Arctic program, and the only reason why I didn't get in was, number one, is I didn't have a degree.
Okay.
And in 2008 actually, I had a gentleman from Denver call me through a company called Raytheon Polar Services.
Right, Raytheon, big company, man. At that time, they handled the Antarctica placement of professionals, and they ended up giving me an interview. And I don't know, I had probably 10 different people from the National Science Foundation. I almost remember it like it was yesterday. And we talked for about an hour and went through a series of questions. And before you know it, man, I was heading to Denver, Colorado. And I had to pass a lot of tests, and
I had actually signed up for the McMurdo Research Station, which is on the New Zealand peninsula, and didn't really want to go 800 more miles into about 125-degree difference in the weather climate, being the coldest and harshest place on the planet.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't want to go from either the McMurdo Station or the Palmer Station. That's been going there for years because of the climate difference, the temperature difference. But anyway, it come to pass that I was the safety manager over the Amundsen Scott Research Station, which is about $1 billion research station. It's a brand new one that just built in the Antarctica. And we had several projects to do. We had a major project there with tearing down the old dome, which is actually owned by the Navy. And the Navy wanted to take it apart and put the first 3 rings. It's actually in a museum out in California. And then I have an authentic piece that was given to me for my service, stamped by the National Science Foundation with a certificate. And anybody else that was involved. And then we had several other projects, Aaron. Project Ice Cube, which was to install the very first neutrino telescope on the planet, which was very detailed. And
that was to study the neutrinos passing through the Earth, right?
That is correct. The very first of its kind to do the research of the neutrinos and neutrino study for our, what I call the millenniums of the future. And so we had a lot of telescope probes to install in the ice with all the cables going to the data center there at the South Pole. So we had that major project to do through the summer months of 2009 to 10.
How close were you to the actual South Pole?
I was at the actual, if you stood at the South Pole, every which way would be north.
It's crazy.
Far as you can go on the planet south.
Now, I remember being jealous because you were telling me you had all of these kind of chefs, pastry chefs, and you had to eat 4,000 calories a day, but somehow you lost weight at the same time. And I was like, man, that seems great.
Well, we had 16 chefs around the world that was, from all parts of the country. And then we had 6 pastry chefs that did nothing but just make cookies and cakes and ice cream and those sort of things for us. And I weighed in at the time 219, and we had to eat at least it's about 10,600 feet above sea level there at the South Pole. So we had to really consume overall in a 24-hour period around 6,000 calories.
That's crazy.
To maintain your weigh-in weight.
Why are you have to eat so many more calories?
Well, the weather is so cold and your body is at that level of above sea level, which altitude sickness was a big deal for people. Excuse me.
I didn't realize it was that high from the sea. I figured it was sea level, but
no, it's 10,600 feet above sea level at the South Pole.
That's pretty high.
It's pretty high. The air there is very thin, and got to take altitude medicine while you're there.
Really?
Oh yeah, I took it about 30 days before I deployed to the South Pole, and 2 things could happen to you. You either adapt to it or you don't.
Okay.
And when you get there, usually within the first day, you'll know if your body is going to adapt to the above sea level. And I had more problems probably with people just getting there and then ending up in a gamma bag.
Man.
Gamma bags stabilize a person's pressure, and so we had several people that ended up in a gamma bag until we could get them flu.
Sounds like something that would turn you into the Hulk.
Yes.
So I remember you were telling me a crazy story the old Edmondson Scott Research Center kind of got covered by snow and ice, and you guys kind of had to excavate it out, and you ended up with these like 50-foot walls, and you said something like pouring hot water on them to solidify them, and you'd have like D7 dozers right on top of them, and my mind was just swimming like, first of all, why would you pour hot water on it? Wouldn't that melt it? And you were saying, no, it makes it freeze faster. And that I had to study that one for a while. That one messed with me. And then I remember saying, how did you get away with driving those dozers right on the cliffs? What did OSHA say? And you were like, there is no OSHA. Antarctica's not a country, you know? Things I just never considered doing safety in a non-OSHA atmosphere.
Yeah, the Antarctica is mainly a treaty that the whole planet is involved in for our planet's research. So us really don't have any regulated other than the company, the National Science Foundation policies and procedures is what we use as guidelines.
So you probably had Raytheon and then the National Science Foundation rules you probably had to deal with, huh?
That is correct, and they're pretty strict, especially working in extreme environments, people outside. We had a control room full of comms people that our field people were constantly in contact with the station. And if you didn't answer when they called you, they sent out me and the research team to go out and find you.
Wow.
Well, pretty strict policies when you left the station.
If I remember right, one of the other projects that was going on when you were there was studying global warming.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I remember, because that was a big topic then. It's still a big topic now, probably bigger now even. And I remember asking you, so is it happening? Is it not? And I remember what you said, and correct me if I remember this wrong, but what I remember you saying was, yeah, they found out that, the planet warms and cools like all the time, and it's been doing that forever,
That's correct. A lot of your environmental people, they blow a lot of stuff out of proportion. But our planet, is a living, breathing planet, and it's going to melt. It's going to grow. Of course, mankind has probably introduced a lot of stuff to the atmosphere that probably has speeded up some of our global warming, Aaron. But it's going to happen around our planet. Like today, it's December here, 2021, and it's 75 degrees here in Benton, Kentucky.
Wow.
To give you the La Nino is what's happening now, I think, on how, I guess, the waters in the Pacific is a lot warmer than normal, which is giving us a little bit higher temperatures here in the Midwest.
I'll take it. I love the higher temperatures.
I'll take it every day.
So what about, I'm used to cold weather safety being in Iowa. We can get 30 below with wind chill. We can get it where guys can't even safely work outside for more than 10, 15 minutes. I'm kind of used to that January, February. But down there on that project, it was that times 10. And being the safety guy, what was some of those hypothermia, frostbite risks you were trying to prevent out there?
We had several levels of people that work inside the station and outside the station. And they train a lot of our field people, and they give them special equipment in New Zealand before we actually get into the Antarctica. They train them on how to suit up, what kind of equipment they're going to need for the jobs that they're going to be doing, whether it's heated suits or what have you. And that's what they use. And, when I arrived at the Antarctica in October of 2009, it was minus 99. That wasn't counting the wind chill factor. And
what did you say? Repeat that.
minus 99 when I arrived in 2009 in October.
That's crazy. I've never heard of a temp like that before.
And that's just normal temperatures, not counting the wind chill factors.
Man.
The wind chill factors, the wind's blowing pretty much anywhere from 40 to around 60 mile an hour on a daily basis. And so you're looking at, at times, even in the summer months when the sun come up, anywhere from minus 100 to minus 160 at different times.
One of the things I remember you saying about the environment down there that I didn't know, you were saying is kind of like a desert. You know, I don't picture a land of snow and ice to be a desert, but you were saying the amount of like new liquid and precipitation is pretty slim down there.
Yeah, every day you get nothing but ice. You know, when I say ice, ice particles are blowing all the time, whether it's coming from the Transantarctic Mountains, from the very tip. Hang on just a second, Aaron.
All right, no problem. And then, when you come back to, I remember you were telling me about sun dogs, and I think you even had some pictures of them, and those were always enjoyable. And then...
Yeah, the sun dogs are amazing because they only happen when the sun is at a certain level, and then the light is shining through those particles. And then you get what they call it. They're actually like a grid in the sky, like when you see the jets flying through the sky.
Oh, okay.
You can see it's like a checkerboard grid is how it would look in the sky. That you had several checkerboard marks in the sky, So very rare occasion, but in the summer months you do get several sun dogs that you get to see, and I took a lot of good pictures of some as well.
And you also flew a flag while you were down there. Is that right? Did I remember that right? You hung a certain flag down there at the South Pole?
I flew 13 flags at the South Pole.
13?
Yes, sir.
I only remember one. What was some of the flags you flew?
I flew one for my dad that we could either could have kept it, or there's a library there at the station where people that fly flags that are assigned to the Amundsen Scott station can leave them there for future people that visit the station can see and look at, or you can take them home with you if you'd like. And I flew one for my dad, and he decided to leave it there, which later in life he wished he would have had me bring it home. I flew one for my family, which I own now, that's here at my home. The dedication, for about 4 months I was gone, taking care of my daughter and taking care of business at home while I was taking care of business at the bottom of the planet. I flew several others. There was one business owner that I flew one there that had a business that I flew downtown at one of the establishments that I eat at and hung out with there. Tim Shannon was his name. He was an owner there of a business in town that I flew. I don't know. Do you remember the guy that he had come down here? He's a guy that cooks all the time. The Frey, is that his name, Frey?
Guy Fry?
Guy Fry. He came down when we had it posted. I got a bunch of pictures of it. I'll send them to you later, and of me and him and Tim hanging up his flag with some pictures of me flying it there at the South Pole. And that gentleman was there. I guess he was there on behalf of Tim. They were getting ready to have some kind of cookout there at his big place back in those days.
I remember you flew one for our sports team.
I did. I also flew one for, when you say sports team, it was for the LSU.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a friend of mine.
Now, I'm going to make a whole bunch of people mad because, I'm not a college football guy. What is LSU? Is it the Tigers? What are they?
It is the Tigers, baby.
Oh, okay. I remember that one. All right.
Yeah, my friend of mine, he's a really diehard Tigers fan, and he sent me a flag. Believe it or not, we do have a post office there. It takes you about 3 weeks to get mail there. But Bob sent me this flag, and I flew it. took a lot of pictures, man, and sent it back to him there in Louisiana, and south of Shreveport, Louisiana. And it's kind of crazy because Bob had a lot of connections with the LSU and the owners and what have you. And I don't know if I told you everything, but Bob ended up giving it to the owners there and temporarily. And, excuse me. And they flew it at halftime at one of their big events.
That's pretty cool.
And they flew it. It was in the newspaper. Bob sent me the article in the newspaper, and they flew it at halftime in honor of me. And then I got lifetime tickets to the Tigers game. But
what?
I haven't went to one game.
Man.
Not one game have I went to, which I guess some of those cats that would have this golden ticket, so to speak, would probably be glad to get it because I'm just wasting it.
Right. Right. Well, they heard it now. They're coming after you.
They're coming after
I want to switch gears and keep talking about Antarctica, but just safety and extreme environments. So let's start with transportation. So around here on these big construction sites, everybody's driving these UTVs, these side-by-sides.
Yep.
What did they do out there to get around?
We had a lot of different equipment. A lot of them were track hoes, special equipment with tracks on them. We had what they called the traversed team that handled nothing but waste, and it's all run by GPS systems. And
did you have snowmobiles? Because I imagine those would be like the UTVs,
Yeah, they had GPS systems on them, and we had a couple of the D7s that fell into what I call ice voids out at the old.
I remember that. Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, we had two guys that was moving ice, and they were supposed to move so many square feet of ice at the old South Pole, which is about 2 miles from the new station, and it's all under the ice. And we had a couple pieces of equipment that went into what they call ice voids. So we spent about a week on trying to come up with all the rigging that we could come up with and use what resources we had available with equipment to pull both these pieces of equipment out, a Challenger and a D7.
Man.
And come up with a good plan, man. We got them both out, and both guys could get hurt.
Nice.
They got their feelings hurt.
And nobody died on the equipment rescue either, because that could be dangerous. Line snapping, coming back. A lot of people have died in America in that situation.
Yeah, we pulled them out, and they continued. We had the National Science Foundation has to remove thousands and thousands of square feet of ice every year for maintenance around the new station, and of course the old Emerson Scott station. They spend about $4 million a year to just snow removal and ice removal to keep from crushing the dome.
Wow.
Because it shifts all the time. But yeah, we pulled that out, pulled it off, and come up with a good rigging plan and pulled it off, man. Got them out.
Is there any special hazards to the eye for being with all that ice and elevation, and like for the like eye protection for the guys out there?
Yeah, I had to have special glasses made for especially prescription eyewear. And anytime you go outside, your eyes are the fastest healing part of your body. And especially in very, very extreme cold weather conditions, your eyes is the first to freeze up.
Wow.
It'll be your eyes, your lips, your ears.
Frozen eyeballs sounds kind of terrible.
It is a terrible thing if it ever happens to you. But you got to make special glasses to withstand at least a minus 100 degrees. So we had good glasses for people that wore glasses, and in my case, where I wore prescription eyewear, I had to meet a certain criteria for my glasses to enclose, the surrounding of the lenses right to my face, to keep the air from getting in them. So
if a guy lost his safety glasses out there, it's a big deal. You're not just going to pull another $20 21-cent safety glasses out of a 24 box and just hand them to them, they're probably going to be a few $100s.
That is correct.
Man.
My glasses, that they made was about $600.
What? Wow.
And I got to keep them.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So
they set criteria what they had to be like, the material and everything. So they had to make them per the criteria.
What other unique hazards did the guys face out there besides the cold to the eyes, the UV to the eyes, the cold temperatures in general? I mean, what was special? Like, what was different for you when you come from a safety guy from America? At this point, you've been on a million jobs, you've seen it all, and now you go to this one. What made you go, wow, this is different? I'm not used to doing this.
Hypothermia was a big deal. Just people. I had a siding crew that worked off scaffolding, putting in on the new siding on the new station. And for example, they worked 15 minutes and then they took 45-minute breaks.
That's crazy. How do you get any work done?
It's just the way it works.
Just slow, huh?
It's just slow going. Anything outside was slow going. All the porta johns that we had outside were all solar powered. So they all worked, had heat inside of them where they warm up. They could warm up inside the porta johns.
What I imagine safety disciplinary action would be different when you're in Antarctica. I mean, it's not like you just fire a guy and he's going to grab his tools and get in his pickup truck and drive home. So,
I'll tell you the difference. They spent 6 months training people. And when you leave the United States, it's with the intent that you're going to use your training skills. And believe me, the quality of people that I had, plus the seriousness from our leaders. Our supervisors was serious about it. Taking down the old dome was no joke. We had to install a lot of fall protection cables around the dome for the iron workers to do their work. And believe me, it took 2 weeks to install everything. It was tested. I was the first one on the dome to check all of the tile points to make sure they're installed properly per the plan, fall protection plan. And they just have a different mentality, Aaron. They walked the talk because they knew if they lost their glasses or a glove, they had about 30 seconds.
Wow.
In the extreme environment to maybe lose a limb, lose a finger, so they were real serious about it. And the difference is they took their time.
Okay. That's probably a big difference.
Big difference. They took their time, man. They focused on their task. They followed the plan. There's a plan for everything from wastes to installing fall protection to starting equipment, frames. There is a procedure, and that's what they follow.
Well, that must have been actually kind of refreshing, though, coming from America Safety, where everybody hates safety and hates slowing down and hate making plans and hate safety meetings and hate safety training. And then you go over there and everybody's like on board with it. Did that throw you off a little bit?
It did a little bit at first, but then I liked it.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
It made my job a lot easier. And I was a go-to guy. If they needed, say, an LEL monitor while they're under the ice, they could come to me and get it with no problem. There wouldn't be no preaching to them. I attended most of the pre-safety meetings most of the time. If we had an event getting ready to happen, I was there with the crew to go over the plan and the safety precautions. And this is how we're going to do business. And I didn't lose anybody at the South Pole while I was there. I had some frostbite. Some guys, lost maybe a finger that, got frostbite. But mainly altitude problems, altitude sickness is what I dealt with.
Well, I like talking about safety overseas with you. Not a lot of safety people in America know that there's safety opportunities overseas. I remember another gentleman I was working with on an ethanol plant. he had done a lot of work overseas, high paying stuff,
Yep.
and he saw a lot of crazy stuff too. But when you're a safety professional, there's a lot of European countries that are really, really into safety, kind of make OSHA look like a kitten, and
Yep.
there's opportunities other places, and just like you got to go to Antarctica.
Right.
Have you heard of any jobs or had any other job offers in your over 30 years, about other crazy things like Antarctica or going to other countries? Or
Yeah, I've had Halliburton called me a few times to go to different places, and of course, I had so much work in the United States, I wasn't interested. But some of those guys make $200,000-$300,000 a year.
Man.
The first $80,000, $90,000 is tax free. So there's a lot of money to be made. You go to Africa or Japan or Egypt maybe.
I can't remember where this guy went, but he was overseas doing safety, and he said a bunch of terrorists took over the construction site, and they had held them all hostage, and they tortured them. And he was saying one of the things they were doing, I can't remember the details, but they were like slapping the bottom of his feet with these like bamboo slats and, all kinds of crazy stuff. And he said he still got walking problems from it today.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, that sounds wild.
Well, there was a lot of construction in the Middle East, Fleur and Halliburton did, it's always high risk work. And of course, they drill that into your head, that you should never leave the camps and you should stay in the camps and mind your own business. But then there's times when when people from that country get groups together and come over and try to hold you hostage and thinking that you might have a lot of money back home to get, money from your family. But yeah, that's the risk you take when you go to them high risk countries.
So I'm glad there was no terrorist attacks in Antarctica. You were probably safe from that over there.
Yeah, you're very safe in the Antarctica. If any problems that comes over there, you probably self-inflicted them.
Yeah. The closest stories to those that I heard in the U.S. were on the U.S.-Mexico border. I heard some safety people and construction workers tell some wild stories about drug traffickers coming through their construction site. They got regular civilians carrying huge bales of marijuana on their back, and then these drug cartels got all these AKs, following these people, and they're just walking through the desert, and they'd roll up into the site, and they said, water, and the construction workers, they just, they're just asking for water, so they would just always give them the water, and there was no problem. Then they just keep moving on.
Yeah, I remember a guy that was actually on that job in Esterville with you. I called him Cat Daddy Frank.
Okay.
And Cat Daddy Frank used to tell me a lot of stories in Mexico. And of course, I had a couple of opportunities maybe that came up in Mexico for me that didn't materialize. But Frank told me a lot of stories about a lot of the construction in Mexico.
Right.
And it's like any other country.
One other crazy story I heard about the border was on the rattlesnakes. They told me down there in Texas that some of the rattlesnakes quit rattling because then these pigs, these hogs, would hear it, and to them it's a dinner bell, and they would go eat them. And they said that the rattlesnake's teeth couldn't penetrate these feral hogs' skin, and I just thought that was wild.
Yeah, I wouldn't want. I've seen a lot of snakes in my time, and I wouldn't want to be in the desert facing a rattlesnake or a wild hog.
In Antarctica, was there any wildlife, or was it just too cold for them?
Too cold at the Antarctica there at the South Pole, but if you look at the McMurdo Station, which I came through, a lot of wildlife there, a lot of penguin, imperial penguin, several different types of whales, a lot of sea lions there, and then of course the Palmer Station is off of the peninsula of Chile, which is about a 7-day boat trip, has tons of wildlife. That's where they do a lot of their wildlife research, is at the Palmer Station. It's the oldest station out of the 3 U.S. stations in the Antarctica.
You know, a lot of people don't realize some of the hazards wildlife pose. This is just a funny story, but I think I heard it from you up in that Esterville job where a guy just got bit by a stray cat on the site.
Yep.
You know,
yep.
and
we used to get cats that got up in all the stage piping, and between the snakes, I did a job in West Virginia. And I had a state game warden come up that was nothing but a snake handler.
Wow.
And he brought, 15 different West Virginia snakes to the job site. A lot of people was from different parts of the country. Didn't know what a rattlesnake looked like. Didn't know what a timber rattler looked like. Didn't know what a wildcat looked like, So he went through that. It was a very good, well drawn out 45 minutes of what poisonous snakes look like versus, wildcat, wild possums, skunks, those type of things. We had them there in Esterville. The first thing human nature is want to pet one of them, try to pick it up,
Right.
And then you get bit, and you end up getting rabies shots, which I wouldn't recommend for nobody to take. And other things you could get from just a bite from an animal,
You ever had a guy on any of the other sites get bit by anything from spiders to snakes to attacked by wild animals or anything on a job site?
A lot of spider bites, throughout the years. I've had some snake bites. People, messing with stage material and overgrown,
right,
grass and tree timber. No wild dogs or no coyotes, nothing like that. But we haven't had a lot of wildcats that is pretty common in the industry.
Now, I remember a project around here. It's kind of the opposite. It wasn't wildlife hurting humans. It was humans hurting wildlife, and these construction workers, they got thrown off site. I think you were out here during this story. You might recall it. But we had this chemical manufacturing plant down south here, and they had, 5,000, 8,000 workers from the south. And when they saw our deer up here, wow, were they mesmerized, because these deer up here are huge. And they ended up trapping some and killing them with knives and got kicked off site for that.
Yeah, it's usually a common practice during orientation to tell people, if you mess with any of the wildlife, you're automatically terminated, And,
right.
Of course, you know how humans are. Sometimes
right.
They want to be curious and they get in trouble.
Yeah, they want to land that 10-point buck, man. That's like, a couple 100 pounds,
Leave home.
While they're on the job, with a big old knife. Yeah, I mean, the safety world's funny. Dealing with humans, there's just so many things that come out of left field that, the safety person got to be prepared for, and sometimes there's no way to prepare for it. But after it happens, then you're prepared for it on the next job, and you start telling the guys, hey, no trapping deer and killing them on this site. And then they look at you like you're crazy and go, well, I just came from a site where they did that, and we had to send the guys home. So,
well, orientation's a big deal to me. It kind of sets the tone for the job. It don't have to be no 8-hour orientation or 40-hour orientation, but just, to brief the people about the site that you're getting ready to let them work on, what the hazards are going to be and what you expect out of them, which includes wildlife, weather-related items, or whatever,
Without naming any company names, I remember an orientation story from you where you were running this company through this orientation, talking about safety. You got to tie off. We're safe here. We're safe, and you got to have harnesses. And they were like, "Oh, well, we're out of here then." And they got up and left. They were bin jackers.
Bin jackers is a rare breed.
You remember that group?
I do remember it. I did have a group come in one day that I was told early on in the morning that was going to arrive to do our bin installations. And there's not really a whole lot of people that can do those except for bin jackers. And of course, I started my spiel and was introducing myself. I told them about our substance abuse policies and procedures, and then they just got up and left.
Man. Yeah,
But,
and then guess who gets in trouble? The safety guy,
The safety guy.
We're just trying to do our job, and then we're the evil safety guys. Well, Mr. Tracy, believe it or not, we have hit our hour mark, and it has been a pleasure talking with you, picking your brain, hearing your stories. I got to have you back on because in 30 years, I know we haven't scratched the surface. I want to talk about your work in nuclear facilities. I want to talk about all the other projects that you've been on, all the dam projects you've been on, not cussing like dam as in water dam projects, all the unique things that a lot of safety people don't get experience. So thank you so much for coming on, man, and we'll have to get you scheduled to get back on. But so Tracy Matheny, thank you very much. I'm Aaron Icino, and Tracy Matheny for sure with me today. We are the evil safety dudes. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.